Missed a few bucks.
Doing something inside and
Yeah. Have to replace the old guy.
Alright, we're live. Welcome back to the 2018 Canadian Lawnmower Championships. A little bit chilly now that I'm not running around so much. But, no, it's good out here. So we have men's fours in front of us this morning. We have Saskatchewan A against BCA. Quick rundown of the teams. BCA is Corinne Bartu, Derek Kaufman, Derek Mason. Saskatchewan A is Jonathan Petuli, Michael Petuli, Grant Wilkie, and Murray Petuli. We've got 3 Petulis and a Wilkie on that team. The trials have already finished, so we are getting right into end number 1 here. We're down on B6 for the day. So men's fours all day today. You can find out which specific games round 2 and round 3 will be by going to our website, bullsmall.com. It's interesting that since we're on this end ring here, you can see the shadows of the trees along the side just coming over enough to cover almost the whole ring. So it appears that'll make the one team a little bit faster than the other. I can see it from here, but not on the monitor. But yeah, they have the center lines chalked now, so that'll save a little bit of time. We did have a couple games time out yesterday, I believe. Saskatchewan A went 2-1. They lost to Ontario B by 2. They beat Manitoba and beat Saskatchewan B. They lost to Manitoba, lost to Ontario A, and lost to BCB. So we're running to win today. Absolutely. Today's moving day, I guess.
Particularly One of the good things about this. Just played the game. Tim is from
Yeah, that's if I remember correctly.
Join some
this, but I believe it's either his cousin or across back in the day.
for the half behind, just come in with a job.
Charity tournament. Either picked up since he started.
So you're my go-to man.
There's quite a few people here I know. For as many as I know, there's probably equally as many.
Inside the clubhouse.
I remember.
That way I wouldn't have to do it. They could just do it. They could do it.
Winnipeg was there. Morning. We were in the main pool, and Cody and I are both very fast players, so we all of our goals were being delivered before the one before him to a stop. And so the marker for us was really having to hustle back and forth because we kept playing Matt at the hot line. So on the team.
The whole lot of
probably sets back on 2 sets. So I'd be running in and by far the fastest game. Also, the best game definitely understand taking your time to visualize the line. It is something where if you're not naturally a faster player, you really do need to take the time to set yourself and make sure you're doing what you need to be doing.
Still opportunities.
I think Karan just needs to draw this off right now. And he's close. Just through.
Yes.
One thing though is when they're playing other direction, when I use that camera, all I see is like deep lines. So it's absolutely terrible. So if you could like zoom in when they're playing other, that'd be cool. The post is fine.
I could use a tripod a little bit further forward, and if I was shooting through that, I'd have to need to.
Okay. You might want to bring scissors and cut the strings because I've had to put them down. So there's two scissors on one side. Grab that on your way through. Well, what's the verdict here? Yep. 1 Saskatchewan, 2 Saskatchewan.
Looks to be it.
And putting tape to it. You can see the rest of the team is kicking in the bowls that aren't in the count, and I love it when people do that because that just speeds
Yes.
things up immensely.
Absolutely. Yeah.
So by the time they're done measuring here, they'll have 4 bowls to kick, 5 bowls to kick in. believe that was 3. Four, 3 after 2. High scoring affair.
Murray's been very involved in Bowls Canada as treasurer.
Mm-hmm.
And
just take it off altogether for now, just so we can see what's going on.
this is Jake being the production director.
All the way. Turn up. Go. Well, your second shot, you need to add 2 feet. I don't mind you adding even a yard.
Especially in the forest game, I fully expect this to be one of the first games off. Each player.
All the way. Get that up. Park on dog, I think. Is that far in front? Well, one.
Cool.
Here we come again, side. Don't mind if you come in here, trying to get in the air.
As always, if you want to get in touch with us, reach out to us on social media, Facebook or Twitter.
Your wave is just wide. Not even hit. All that ball. That's back.
these players may have something to work out here yet.
Hmm.
Although two ends, very high scores in the first two ends, and this end, I don't know. What do you think? You think?
Yeah, I don't think it'll be another 3 or 4, but still another 3 bowls left to come. We'll see what's what. As they all huddle around to examine the situation. We talked about this yesterday briefly about getting your whole team involved, and you see all 3 Saskatchewan players plus John up in the head, assessing, communicating.
Mm-hmm.
Love to see that.
I agree with you.
Here comes John's bowl. I think he's looking to come through the port there.
I think he may have achieved it.
He's just coming up a little bit short.
He's blocking it a bit. Yes. Must be tight in there. They're spending a little bit of time doing some quick measures, and I'm not sure that's going to change the outcome. He's got to put his bowl in there. Excuse me. It's really brisk here this morning, and compared to yesterday, where there was not a branch moving, here they're moving, and quite at least where we are. Maybe somewhere else over there. The wind is a little bit less, but right here we've got a lot of breeze.
Mm-hmm. So Heron's last bowl's coming up here. That's going to be tricky to get into. I think this is a bit of a tricky rink.
So that's all tied up at 4. The game begins again.
I think it's called a Tilly hat, and that seems to be a very popular hat choice for bowlers, and I'm curious why that is.
I don't know particularly that's that hat, but I do see and I do agree that people are wearing more wide-brimmed hat than the baseball cap. Gives you that, but the rounded brim hat is I notice a lot of people wear hats that are wide brim with coverings over the back of the neck.
Oh, great shot there from Tim. Yes, yes, there's a lot of people that cover the back of their neck. I guess.
Possibility of getting sunstroke. That's where it builds up, and you get it on the back of your neck, you get sunstroke before you know it.
Oh, Grant Wilkie just grabbed the jack. What a beautiful shot. I've heard some people say it's the most important position in a force team. I've heard some people say the exact opposite. And I've heard everything in between.
Well, interesting. With the team that Johnny Bush had put together, Rooster, as we affectionately call him, and I think we did quite well. I don't think we won the tournament, but I think we did quite well from memory. But it gave me a great love of the fours game. I really do love fours. Playing as a team. I get that with pairs and I get it with triples, but something neat about fours. Unfortunately, the club I
It's a very interesting comment.
A little light. Good road.
There are numerous reasons why we drop triple. So one of them being that almost every club is just as you said, they don't really hold fours tournaments. So one of the many reasons was we figured if we got rid of fours and just had pairs and triples at a national championship, then we'd never play fours again. That's not the only reason, but that is a big factor as well. You don't want to lose that discipline. We can't exactly make a decent name for ourselves on the international stage if we're sending players overseas who've never played fours before.
Correct.
Talking to Terry yesterday, he was telling me that in New Zealand they have the singles and pairs for a week, and then they have the fours for a week at a different time. But that's their New Zealand Open. They don't actually have triples included anywhere at all. It's just singles, pairs, and fours, which is ironically enough what we're doing here this week too.
But I do like triples. You know, once again, when you're bowling, it's there's something about the team, but I do like singles because you know that is the ultimate test. You've got no one else to support you. You have to deliver the goods or not. What's your preference, Jake? You know, you asked the question, but what's your preference? What's your favorite format?
Favorite format? Ooh, that's a good question. Growing up, I used to love singles, so for about 15 years, singles was my preference just because that was where I could dominate the most. But for the past maybe 5 or so, pairs has been my go-to just because I'd always play with Cody, and so the two of us would have a heck of a lot of fun because we knew how each other played and yeah, just had a lot of fun on the green. But when Dylan was still playing with us, triples was always a good time too because the three of us were always just picking names from a hat for which position we would play every single game. And as we said yesterday, it's always fun when you're winning. The one summer, Cody kept track of our stats, and I think we went like 62-2 when we played triples together or something like that. So we had a very good record, which makes it all the more enjoyable. But I think I would have to go with pairs just because it's a little more involved.
Just a minute here. There he is.
Trying to fix the.
Well, if you have a good pairs partner and you're a team and you're playing together, yes, very good. But if I look at tennis years ago, I used to think that tennis was a singles game. That was always the way I saw tennis when I played it. I didn't see it as playing fours. So making the transition from playing a lot of tennis when I was a kid, and then thinking about the game, I used to play singles and fours, doubles in tennis, as you call it, and coming over and playing this game later in my life. I wish I'd started when I was told back in '78. I might have been awesome by now. Would have had a lot of years of it, trying at least.
Yeah, I think 3-ball pairs is probably my favorite format.
Game.
Not a big fan of 4-ball pairs. Way too much.
Too much there, isn't there?
Too much junk.
Yeah.
Too many opportunities for players to get a good rub, get a good bounce, get wicks. That's why I absolutely hate 3-ball triples too. Using 9 balls on the green, I think is just way too much cluster.
Yeah, yeah. It allows for the wee bit of luck. Well, you need that with whatever part of the game you're playing, but the wee bit of luck can be the difference in you who has played wonderful bowls and the other guys who have played good bowls, and the decision goes to them. That too much stuff is right.
Speaking of a little bit of luck, I don't know if I would call this luck or not, but I remember growing up back in Chesley for our league nights, there would be a guy named Arthur I'd always play against, and his strategy was to drop bowls about 6 feet short and then plow them into the head. And he did that consistently every time I played him, and I don't think I ever beat him. He always got the exact perfect amount of weight to hit that one bowl straight through the head onto the jack and trail it back, and no matter what I did, he'd always use that strategy against me, and I could never figure out a way to get past it. But not the greatest draw bowler by any means. If there wasn't a short bowl, he didn't know what to do. But
well, he worked out something for himself. And
yeah.
One thing we haven't commented on in the last last couple of times we did it yesterday is the number of coloured bowls that you see on the green today. My first time that I ever saw bowls when I was 4 or 5, and they were all black or brown. The men wore straw hats, so they had ties on and jackets. And this is in Australia, and long pants and brown shoes. And I can see that game, not the entire game, but I can see portions of it as clear today as I'm sure it was then. Now, I know the mind can play tricks on you, but that was the image that I had. Today we've got numerous coloured bowls. We've got numerous team colours. It's a festive occasion here. The game that I particularly saw, they all were white. and they only differentiated their team by a badge on their jacket. So they knew who they were, but the spectator had no idea. I had no idea who they were. I didn't know what they were doing, and this bowling green was across from my grandparents' place. Thank you. Just black. Just got a request if I wanted another coffee. I said yes. Yeah, so that game was very staid in the hot summer sun in Australia at mid-afternoon. To have these gentlemen with blazers on so I asked my parents, what do they call this game? Because they were very active tennis players and very active, and they told me it was bowls, and it stuck in my mind.
Tim just had a good shot there to take it away from Murray. Grant is coming down here now, trying to reclaim it back. I think he's coming up a bit short.
How did he go there? I got blocked here. I'm not looking at the monitor. I'm
looking at it on the screen.
I could see it straight through, and then all of a sudden I got blocked.
Well, he came up short, so Joe's still trying to draw around him. Now it's interesting. They are playing this ditch hand now. I've heard some funny stories about how people tend to stay away from the ditch hand side, whether it's actually a poorer hand or not. People are just not as comfortable playing that hand for whatever reason.
I think it's maybe psychological, but I think on the other hand there is a difference. I know certainly the clubs that I play at mostly there's a difference. But what the heck, you just play it. I have to smile when I first, on your comment, Jake, is when I first got into the game, they said this side's wider than the other side. I said it's supposed to be both the same side from the center line. How can they be wider? I didn't understand, and at that time I didn't spend time talking to my dad about the nuances of the game. What a gentleman and a scholar. Thank you very much. Appreciate it. It's kind of cold here, and the warm coffee will hopefully help
warm you up a bit. Yeah.
Warm it up a bit, yeah.
Mike Petulli is just drawn shot, I believe. Yep, that should be good enough for number one.
Once again, looking at the other rinks, no one's running away with the game, I don't think. They're all pretty tight, and so is the game we're watching. It's not...
6-4 is still a very close game.
It's still close, yeah. Given that there's quite a lot of time left to play.
Mm-hmm. Just through. I'm not sure if that's what John was calling for or not, but now he's got a back ball out of it. Derek Kaufman's just delivered, and I don't think that's going to be good enough for shot. Coming up a bit short.
But I do think that the head's starting to tighten the last end, and this one's a little bit tighter again.
Slowly starting to tighten, that's right. Yeah. They're slowly starting to figure it out.
Yep.
I do like to see that sort of semicircle of bowls right behind the jack. It's good to have that, whether you're up or down, to have those bowls there. It also makes it a lot easier for the skips right now. There's only, I think, 3 short bowls they have to navigate through, and that's always difficult when you have too many of those. I remember when I first started out playing juniors, and my little sister was only, I think, 7, and we were playing in a junior tournament pairs together. She couldn't quite get them down. The furthest she could throw was just to the hog line. So the other team quickly figured out, hey, if we put it on the tee, then he's going to have 4 blocks to have to get through. And it wasn't until the last end when I just decided to have her all play the one hand so I could actually get through on the other hand. And she wasn't too happy about that. She was saying, you should have had me come the other way. But I was thinking, what does it matter? You can only get them to the hug line anyway.
Right. Oh, that was good thinking on your part.
Makes it tricky when you have to plow through short bowls.
Yes.
Harendra Bartu is up on the mat. He's done very, very well at the PIBC there, the indoor singles. He's
Yes, he
gone,
has.
I think, 3-4 years in a row, something like that. He's tremendous on the carpet.
Yes, he is. Yeah.
Ooh. Just kissed off John's bowl to go around the jack.
I think to your point again, we come back to the conversation for bowls to move along in Canada. We have to recognize that more bowlers operate out of the Ontario province, and we need to get a facility like Vancouver so that our players can play good quality bowls year round.
If we had the funding, I would love to have sort of regional high-performance centers with the PIBC servicing the West Coast. Maybe something in Ontario for Central and something out in, I don't know, maybe Nova Scotia for the East Coast, just to serve as sort of centers of excellence, I guess, that
that's
high-performing players could perform at. I know we've talked with other sports about what they do, and I heard from Tennis Canada, for their high-performing program, if they identify you as having potential at a younger age, they will work with you at one of their local centers, depending on where you live. But as you get older, they will relocate you to a bigger high-performance training center, maybe somewhere else in your province or somewhere province next door. And then once you get to, I want to say they're around the age of 15 to 18, somewhere in that ballpark, they will bring you to either Montreal or I think it's in Alberta. They're two highest top-tier training centers. And they will pay for a tutor so you can continue your education, but you will be playing and practicing tennis almost full-time while you're at their training centers. And it's performed quite well for them, as you can see through Tennis Canada's results lately.
Lately, they've been wonderful.
Shapovalov and Raonic and Bouchard and a lot of other young guns up and coming. Canada's tennis program is fantastic, so that model is working very well for them, but it's taken them, I want to say, 7 to 10 years to actually develop it and get it functioning to where it's at now. Obviously, the biggest hindrance to anything like that would be funding. I don't know how they managed to put all of that together. I'm sure they worked with a lot of cities, communities, granting organizations to do that. But I'm curious how that affects the players themselves to be relocated to a different province, to a different city, different lifestyle, really, because you're sort of taken away from all your friends, family, and pursuing tennis almost as a full-time career at a very young age.
Yeah, well, it's a big question. I think that you need your growing up friends. You will change them after you go to perhaps university, or you will change them as you go through life. But those growing up friends that I call them are very important to you. They give you a stability, and they give you a camaraderie that you need outside your immediate family. So relocating someone from one province to another province is it's a bit of a challenge, I think. And I'm sure that there's stories that are not very pretty, where the kids get all mixed up and emotionally mixed up and they quit.
Mm-hmm.
And then there's some that dig deep and excel. The road to success in anything is most interesting, how people adapt. There doesn't seem to be one formula, one size fits all.
Mm-hmm. Well, it's interesting too. by the time you're 16, 17, 18, and they've relocated you to be pursuing tennis full time. One of the things that many sport psychologists, sport scientists, sport experts agree on is that to truly be a good athlete, you need to play multiple sports from a young age, so you don't burn out or don't get injuries from overuse of using the same muscles nonstop. So I think that there is some method to their madness. They don't relocate you to be tennis full-time until you're at least 16.
Right.
And I guess by that age, they figure you've played multiple sports long enough until that point. I'm not sure if I agree with that. I think you should still be playing multiple sports until you're probably 18, 19, 20. But
Well, I think you know you're right. You pick an age, 16. They picked. You picked 19 or 20. Someone else might pick, a different age. But the idea of multiple sports is very good.
the Sport Nova Scotia crew developed a really fantastic video. It's about 3 minutes long that addresses that topic of really, I guess, parents caring too much about getting their kids into hockey. And it talks a lot about, hockey camp in the summer and then hockey 24/7 for their kids, and the kids just end up hating it. And it's very humorous, their take on it, the way they have all the parents there and dressed up in their hockey gear. And the moral of the story is more or less saying that, you should be letting your kids have fun, and that usually means playing more than one sport. It shouldn't just be hockey 24/7 when they're 7 years old.
Right.
But it's a fantastic video. If you haven't seen it, go on YouTube and look up Sport Nova Scotia. I'm sure it'll be one of the first videos you see.
I have, I don't know if I told you, but I have a brother that decided at 48 he wanted to be a golf pro. And he was just a weekend duffer. He didn't even play very much on the weekend. His game was tennis, and so at 48 he said, by 50 I want to be a golf pro. He didn't make it until he was 52. So I think that there's ambition and there's dedication. He read everything he could read. He practice. He was going through a change of life with his wife and business and so on and so forth. And so you must have that passion we talked about yesterday too. So you burn out. Yes, people do burn out. Well, that's an unusual measure I just saw there.
On rink B1 in front of us here of men's pairs.
The measure was to the top of the bowl, and then the measure on the other one was to the middle of the bowl. So they know what they're doing, I guess. Maybe it's the angle we have here.
Yeah, right in front of us is on rink B1 men's pairs, Saskatchewan and BC, and Ernie Mead just laid the mat. It's his birthday today. That's not many people get to play in a national championship on their birthday.
No. Kind of neat thing. Talking about moving the mat, the two teams we're watching haven't done that. They've set the mat and they're still continuing to play to that length. It's been. I'm a proponent of moving the mat. I'm not a proponent of going up and down with the mat, but I believe in moving it to. Maybe sometime to take the rhythm away from your opponent, or to find a new one for yourself. It's not always taking it away from somebody else. It's making sure that you're staying in the game. And I find it a tool when I play pairs with my go-to pair partner, Paul. We try to find it amongst ourselves. What are we doing?
Tremendous effort there from John. He threw a drive and just kissed the ball that was resting on the jack to flip it around to the other side now. I'm not sure if that's going to make a easier or smaller target angle for him. But
well, can you see through there? Or is it better on the screen?
It's a little bit better on the screen if you can see that. Have to put your glasses on to see it though. It's still a ways away. We've got a bull that's resting shot. That's a BC bull. It was on the other side of it, and as you can see on your screen there now, It was on the left of the jack, now it's on the right of the jack. Just from the drive, he just flipped it over. And
Oh,
what a
what a
beautiful
ball.
ball from Haran.
What a ball. Just picked it up.
That's going to be a little bit more difficult now for John. I think he's going to have to work with a double, maybe. A bowl into the head, maybe.
So what is BC sitting by the look of it? Is it possibly 3, or are they their bowls? Because Saskatchewan's only bowling green bowls, aren't they? As a team.
I know that Mike is using green bowls. I'm not sure about the rest of the team. I know that Grant uses black. I believe they're Henselite Classics.
Well, that's been a good go-to bowl over the years.
Mm-hmm. Just a little bit wide. Didn't want to come in with that kind of weight. So I've got on the scoreboard 8-4 because I can't quite see the scoreboard down at the other end. It could be 9-4 even for Saskatchewan before this end is through.
We need those
Need those,
binoculars.
yeah, bifocals.
And I'll just go and do an old trick. You know, I think you're possibly right. I'll take off the headset and I'll go and have a look. Possibly right, it might be.
It might even be 9-4. That's fair. Haran still has one bowl left to come here in this end, so we'll see what sort of damage he can make. It looks like it's for sure 1 for BC after his trail last time. He doesn't need to change too much, actually. He played a really good bowl last bowl there. Big thanks to all the volunteers who've helped put this show on the road. Also big thanks to George Cubis and the umpiring crew that he's got going on here. As everyone knows, you need to have officials at a championship to enforce the rules. And Haran is right there. Just about. Missed it by a few inches. So Mike's picked out a couple already and has declared it. I believe he declared it as 2, but I'm not sure on that. We'll see what the scoreboard says. And now we finally have a little bit of mat movement. Tim's brought the mat up quite a ways, almost to where it was. And 3 even to make it 8-7 after 5. So we are here in sunny Regina, Saskatchewan. Still plenty of action left this week. This is round 4 of the 4s and pairs. Still round 5 and 6 yet today, 7, 8, 9 tomorrow. Followed by the tiebreakers if there are any, and then the finals on, I guess that'd be Sunday. That's also singles registration, and then there's singles Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday. After that, there's then the mixed pairs and senior triples championships that take place in September. The senior triples are at the Calgary Lawn Bowling Club, and mixed pairs are at the Qualicum Beach Lawn Bowling Club. And then the indoor singles will be in October. I believe it's 22 to 27 or something like that. Head over to the Bowls Canada website to get the exact dates, locations, times. And if anybody is watching out there, feel free to send us a tweet or a message on Facebook cheering on your favorite team, Hometown Crew. You can even send me an email directly if you prefer. Excellent bowl there from Grant Wilkie. Also want to take this opportunity to say that if anybody's looking to get involved, have a bigger impact in bowls that we are recruiting right now. There's positions open for our board of directors as well as our operational committees. So if you'd like to be more involved with bowls, head over to our website. I believe we have the job description under opportunity somewhere on there, or get in touch with Anna or myself and we can point you in the right direction. But whether you want to be on the board of directors or one of our committees, there's lots of opportunities for getting involved with Bowls Canada. That's a fantastic bowl there. Grant has really found his groove here now. He's got 2 locked on there. Not surprisingly, Derek's throwing a little bit of weight here. I think he's keeping the bowl on, but just enough through the head. Fortunately, that cut right across the head instead of bounds on the side. But weight-wise, I think that's exactly what Haran was calling for. John's calling for, is there something past the head from Mike? And Mike got a pretty good rub off that to end up exactly where John wanted it. He was a little bit wide, but got a really good result on that. Not sure if he was planning for that or not. But his weight was excellent, right where John wanted him to be. Must be a pretty big swoop on that hand. That's 2 in a row there. That Derek's come up just a little bit inside. John's clapping. I think that's pretty close to where he wanted it. Daryl's being funny, saying Jake must admit you have the perfect look for commentary. A face for radio, I guess you could say.
Face for radio.
But that's not saying much, though, because people confuse me and Daryl quite a bit, so shooting yourself in the foot there, Daryl. Got to give a big hats off to that volunteer that came and brought you coffee, because he's now out on the green with a platter full of cups of water for all the players. He's behind, I think, like rink 3 or 4, and all the players are coming off grabbing a cup of water from him. And that's just hats off to that gentleman for coming out and making sure all the players are well hydrated too. That's going above and beyond what most volunteers really need to do at an event like this.
Yeah, I think you're right. And the thing that about this gentleman, he's just an all-round guy in volunteering. He was here when we were closing up last night. Mm-hmm. Here first thing this morning. I noticed he was walking along. He was picking up paper and taking the styrofoam cups or something that might blow around. He's quite the volunteer, as you say.
Mm-hmm.
I don't know how much the pay is for this job, but I think they get a shirt, but I'm not even sure about that. Talking about volunteers, if we really do, we really need them in this sport.
Mm-hmm.
But even in the high-paid golfers, they have volunteers, right? The people that sort of are prepared to do something to help the sport. I'm not quite sure about how they do it in hockey, because they've got an arena, it's closed. It's or is it all paid staff, or do they still have volunteers in the National Hockey League? I'm not sure. but certainly we couldn't operate without good volunteers. So what do we have here? The last bowl of the last end for this, or this end, I should say.
I believe there's still one more to come. I think I see another one of John's resting behind.
Oh, I see it there. Yeah,
But,
sitting there.
Interesting though, as before her run through that bowl, Tim was up taking a look at the angles. So even though he's the lead, he's still able to have an impact on how his team's gonna perform or what shots they're gonna make.
Yep. Interesting enough, that bowl I think went clean through all of that traffic and didn't touch a single one. There must be some gaps in there that skillfully bowled bowl can go in and make a shot.
Good question, Daryl. Daryl's asking us, having gone through the first day and now into the second, any thoughts on how the first few rounds went? Any surprises? That's a good question.
Well, that's a question for Jake, Daryl.
Well, to be honest, going into this round here, I am a little surprised that BCA actually went 0-3 yesterday.
I agree with that. I agree with you.
This team is a very strong team, and they've done very well in the past. So that caught me a little off guard, and whether it's the rinks or the teams that they played is, up for debate as well. But I would fully expect them not to be going 0-3 today. So I'm sure I would not be surprised if they went 3-0 today. That being said, they're up against a very tough Saskatchewan team, and it's a very close game as we're going along here too. It's tough to say any surprises though, just because the only 3 games I saw were the 3 on the TV rinks here, so I didn't really get a chance to watch much else, and everything I'm basing off of now is just strictly from the scoreboards that I'm seeing the results online. I will say that I was impressed with the last 2 games that we streamed yesterday, how close they were. They were very down to the wire, down to the last bowl just about, which was excellent to see, and not something I really expect necessarily on TV rinks all the time. And not just because they're end rinks and not necessarily the best rinks, but more so because people get a little nervous when they're playing on TV, or it's a more uneven matchup, just happens to be how the draw works out or what have you. Yeah, normally I guess I'm expecting there to be at least a few blowouts on the TV rinks, and yesterday having 2 out of 3 that were very, very, very tight was a bit of a nice surprise, I guess. I guess one sort of surprise is how low the scores were. I guess there weren't a whole lot of blowouts based off of yesterday's results. I remember tallying up the scores from last year to see what the average plus minus was or the average score differential was for all the games, and there were a few oddballs that really jumped out at me last year. There was one game that was like 42-3. There was a couple games that were like 37-8. Just really lopsided scores. And looking at the scoreboard here in front of me, I don't see that really anywhere. Not to that extent, anyway.
I think some of the teams here that are in the lead, Jake, are starting to consolidate their position. Looking at the Ontario versus Quebec game here, after 8 ends, Ontario is sitting 11 versus 2, and so still some game to be played. But that team is playing well, and then you've got Nova Scotia playing. Looks like British Columbia, is it? And a little bit tighter.
Looking at scores from yesterday, 26-11, 25-9 tends to be sort of the biggest lopsided score, which really isn't that bad. That's sort of like a 15-point spread, and that could really just come down to the last two ends when you're trying to scramble for points. And if you don't get it, you end up giving up a 5 or a 6 on the last end or last two ends because you're trying to get as many as you can. So I always view lopsided scores with a little bit of hesitancy, just because quite often it's close going into the last 2-3 ends, and then one team's trying to make the move and is unsuccessful, and they end up giving a big end they wouldn't normally have. Keith Johnson, one of the great guys from Alberta, he actually looks after the scoring app for us. Just texted me saying he's surprised that the Alberta A men's fours team went 0-3. So that's what he's surprised by from yesterday's results. We have Dean Wood saying he's watching the game beside us with Ontario B in the men's pairs. Give Murray and Rick a shout out from their home club in Seaforth. That's a very, very fun club. I've played in Seaforth many a time, and they have 16 rinks all in one long row. So it's not two decks; it's just one deck of long greens, and right behind the Legion. So their Legion has a little balcony that you can walk out on, and is just right middle of the green, pretty much. It's a really interesting club, really fantastic location. I'd love to go back.
Well, I think they did well yesterday, didn't they? If I can't remember, you might have the numbers very quickly.
Yeah, let's find out how exactly they are. Ontario A or Ontario B?
I think they're A, aren't they?
No, Rickwood and Murray are Ontario B, and they went 1 and 2.
1 and 2, okay. Well, after the close of the business yesterday, they were quite jovial. They're quite. They were not down in their attitude, which is good.
We also have Cindy Higgins, who's been watching Saskers BC while she's packing, because she leaves for Regina tonight. She's coming out to play in the singles. How are the greens running? Well, that's a very interesting question. Yesterday, when I was commentating with Terry, he pulled out his phone and timed them, and he said they were roughly around 11 and a half, something like that. But they've been picking up pace every single day they've been here. And I heard a comment from one of the players. They played out on deck D. I guess they've allocated that whoever's on, I think, the end rink on A and the end rink on B, they're not the greatest, so they moved them over to D deck. And someone informed me that the pace out on D deck was something like 17 seconds or something like that. Like, it's astronomically faster compared to everything out here. I feel like that must have been an exaggeration, just because if these are 11 and a half, something that's only going to be 14 would even feel supremely faster. But I think A, B, and C are all relatively close between 11 and 12. But then I guess D deck might be up to 14, 15 would be my guess. I haven't actually been out there to judge for myself. But very typical pace that you'll find across Canada, the greens here. Very, very average, I guess. And that's not to say that in a bad way at all. That's saying that that's, what you would expect, and a very decent pace to play on.
The other difference from, let's say, from yesterday is that there was no movement of air, completely still. And today we are getting quite a bit of movement of wind, and that may require a little bit of adjustment. Not quite like the adjustment you would have to make if you were playing at on an Australian coastal green, where the gusts of wind can be very substantial. Okay, so where are we here?
Heren's walking up a little bit just to discuss with his team what the ideal shot is here with his last bowl. And I think Heren's throwing a little bit of weight here into this. Looking to pick John's bowl. He got one of them, but not the one he wanted. I believe that was just one Saskatchewan.
Looks to be. As you say, they remove the bowls very quickly, and their setup is ready to go pretty much straight away.
Mm-hmm. Just above the scoreboard there. So what do you think about those arrow bowls that have the multicolors, as I'm watching one roll down there, the strobe light effect?
I have two sets like that. And I have some people say that they make me dizzy, or I can't stand them. They make me sick. Don't bowl them. Don't play them. I have a bowling partner, and my Burlington club says, please don't bring them. I nicknamed them 5 shots.
5 shots?
5 shots, because people that get upset with them, maybe it's worth 5 shots. So I nicknamed them 5 shots. I like playing with them. One of the things I do find is that you, at least for me, is you start to get to know the rotation and how it slows down. It's maybe hard to, when it's rolling right at least to its halfway mark, the bowl will have a speed, and as it goes past there and it gets closer to the landing spot, it'll slow down, and it seems to tell me something. Now, I'm not the best bowler in the world, so I'm not quite sure this is a valid observation, but I don't mind them. I enjoy playing with them, but since being asked by my mate on Thursday night not to bowl with them, I've been bowling with a speckled blue, and I'm just as happy with them. I don't think it really makes a difference to your game. It's just that when I was distributing aero bowls, I wanted to, and I still do, but I wanted to have something that people might talk about, and they'd come over and say, well, what is that? And then you engage in a conversation, and I'd make a sale or something like that. So, and my colours are the exact same colours as this gentleman's here. But there are many colours in aero bowls. Aero bowls really push the idea of colour. In fact, at one point they weren't making solid colours, black or brown or blue or green or white or pink or green, whatever. I think they since have done some special orders, but I don't think it changes the bowl or the player, really. I think I just personally like to see the colour. And maybe in a few years' time it'll go back to all black and brown, and no one wears colour. It's all white, and you've got a little lapel pin that says you're from Ontario or from British Columbia or somewhere.
Well, I do like what they do with PBA, is that they have specific sets that are only green and only red,
Yes.
different size and whatnot, and that makes it really easy for television or what have you to tell who's who, because someone's always green, someone's always red. You can easily tell who's who, and I like that idea.
Well, they do that at PBA when you get to go to England.
Yes, yes.
But not when you're playing in the playoffs. You play with your own bowls, correct?
Yeah, I'm not sure how that works. I know it's only the stuff on TV that I've seen that is that way. So that might just be the finals. I'm not sure.
Yeah, I think perhaps it might be the finals. If Daryl's still online, and he would probably know that very straight away. But certainly for television, the one team, one colour, another team, another colour, really is spectator friendly. I think the challenge in trying to be innovative in the game is probably beyond anyone. I don't know how much more we can innovate. It is what it is. I've often thought, though, that we should have, just like in golf, you can have different size clubs. Why can't we have different size bowls in your set? Why can't you have different biases in your set? It's your decision to utilize this particular one. It's your foolishness or your smarts that enable you to pull out of your golf club. The difference between your yardage to your next landing spot, or your yardage to the green, and so hopefully you pull out the right club. You've got a caddy, certainly at the PGA level, you've got a caddy giving you consultation. But I don't think the colours are really doing any more than... Except that one gentleman who was bowling, I sold him a set of multicoloured bowls, very much like the one that rolled. They're different colours, but his was blue and green, and I forget what the other shade was, but they were blue and green, aqua kind of colours. And said he saved his game and saved him from the game, from quitting the game. And he sent me an email and how much he appreciated it. And next season he quit the game. So I sort of really have to wonder. I think there's a lot of ownership in the bowls. Do you not find that with your own bowls, that you like your bowls, you enjoy your bowls, you want to...
Yeah, that's true. When I first got them 10 years ago, I quite enjoyed them. Now that they're expired, I feel like I'm going to want to get a new set. But
I know a guy that sells aero bowls. Although I one day, more than once or twice, I've left I thought my bowls were in the car. I don't put them in the club locker because I might be playing in a different tournament. I just left them in the trunk of the car, and whether they get hot or cold, it's really immaterial. And I played with club bowls. It's really the bowler. And, in fact, sometimes I don't want to admit it. When I have done those things, I just played just as well or bad, whatever you want to say, with the club bowls.
it's interesting that to play internationally, though, you have to have club bowls with a stamp that's this year or the future. And normally when they stamp it, I believe it's only good for 10 years.
10 years, yes.
So if you want to keep playing, you have to send them back to the manufacturer to get them retested and restamped, which is a expensive endeavor. It's almost cheaper to buy a new set rather than to do that for folks here in Canada, just because you have to ship it over to somewhere over in the UK, whether it's England, Scotland. I guess would really depend on the manufacturer. Or I guess you could ship it to Australia, although that would probably be a little more expensive for shipping than just to
UK,
Europe.
yeah.
But
we do not have that requirement here, do we?
not at our national championships, no.
No.
It's really only for international play.
Right.
But I actually had someone leave me a phone call while I've been out here. I haven't had a chance to call the gentleman back, asking how can I go about getting my bulls restamped, because they have a stamp from 1967. And I'm going to have to tell him that he'll have to ship it back to I don't know if it was Henselite or Taylor or what bull it was, but you'll have to ship it back to get it retested and restamped, and that's going to be a pricey endeavor.
One of the things I feel about the 10-year stamp, the bowls manufacturers with Henselite and Taylor and Drake and Aero and a couple of other smaller companies, they are very large sponsors of bowls.
Mm-hmm.
And for them to sponsor bowls, people have got to buy their bowls.
Mm-hmm.
Otherwise, they won't be able to sponsor. Yes, they sell grip and they sell cloth and they might sell bags or might sell shoes, but it's not a big money business. So bowlers should support these people, and 10-year stamp is one way of kind of, I think, helping that support.
Yeah, absolutely.
And to your point, you've got to send them, retest them if you want to play international. It would cost you perhaps more than buying a set of bowls. And you can buy sometimes bowls online, sometimes they're on sale at the various companies. They're adjusting their inventories and you might get a special deal. And you'll get a brand new set of bowls. And some people say, well, I like my bowls.
I had an interesting question the other day of what do you do with a set of bowls? Like, how do you recycle them? Because if the club's getting a new set, or if it's super old, nobody wants to use them, or what have you. Traditionally, you normally just donate it to the club, where the club will have it. But if the club has way too many sets and they're all from 1950 or what have you, what do you do with an old set of bowls? Because I don't know if you can't really just throw them in your blue box and have recycling come and take it. Like that. I don't know what they would do with that. So I don't really know what you're supposed to do with bowls if you're looking to destroy them, get rid of them.
My dad played with, started out with Henselite, then he moved to Drake's Pride, and he became a fan of Drake's Pride because he won a lot of events and tournaments with Drake's Pride. And then when I started getting involved with Aero, and I started to tell him about it, and he saw them when I went to Australia one time with him, and he said, what you should do with these older bowls is crush them. That's what was, at 96 or something, whatever he was at the time. Crush them. They're pretty indestructible. Their modern bowl today is, you're not going to put them in your recycling bin easily. You can't bury them in your backyard. They're going to last a long time. So crushing them might. But who would crush them?
Yeah, who would do that? How would you do that?
You need a heck of a machine. They're very compact.
I've seen a couple of unique ideas. I've seen some people use them as decorations in flower gardens. So when you come to the local bowls club, every 5 feet there's a bowl placed in there amongst the flowers. I've seen
that's kind of good.
Some clubs hang them above the doorway, which I think is an incredibly dangerous idea, but it's on the sign, so you've got a bowl, the name of the club, and then a bowl on the sign as you walk in, which...
Still a bit dangerous.
I think a very dangerous idea. I would not recommend doing that, but some of these clubs have been, the signs look like it's been there since 1950, so, if it's still hanging, it's clearly well put together, but... aside from decorations, I'm not sure how creative or inventive you can get with recycling, reusing, destroying old bowls.
I hope this doesn't become a topic of environmentalists, because it's very hard to break these down unless you have a massive crushing machine. One thing, they won't get out into the oceans and create too much of a problem, I don't think.
I say, even if they did, they would probably just sink right down to the bottom and then just be on the very bottom of the seabed.
Yeah, and take a heck of an animal to eat them. But all joking aside, it's interesting. But I don't think there's a business to be had here, Jake.
I don't know. I'm not sure if people would be willing to pay to destroy their bowls. That's
right. And our club changed over from very old club bowls to new club bowls. They basically, a gentleman came along, he heard about it, and he said he'll buy them all. And what he did is he sold some on the eBay, and then he found a club that was looking for some and gave them, and I believe he threw some in the garbage bin. So I don't know how you These are interesting questions that.
I had a thought here. I read an article the other day of how a hotel in New York opted to redo their entire floor made out of pennies. And the way they did it, it ended up being cheaper than if they would have actually got normal flooring material, because it only cost, a cent per little area. And it looked really cool because I've never seen a floor made out of complete pennies before. I'm curious if there's something you could do with the bowl to make it as a other redecorative process, whether it's maybe not flooring. You'd have to really cut those up into small pieces, and as you said, you'd need an expensive piece of equipment to do that. But I'm curious how creative people could get to repurpose a bowl for some other purpose than.
Well, there's one one way that when we were brainstorming, a couple of us over a coffee one time. I was mentioning I was involved with cows in the city. In Toronto, it's called Moose in the City, and they painted cows or moose, and now they've got eagles out in Vancouver. They paint them, and I said, why don't we have paint your old bowls and have a contest? And part of the prize is you get to take all the bowls away. And that's one way to move them along the system. But yeah, you could decorate them and paint them and put them in your garden or do something with them. But it's a heck of a question that someone, how do you recycle these?
Roger Smith is saying that you can use them with the cannonballs.
Yes. Well, they're about the size of one.
I mean, that might not be a bad idea if you can find some pirate ship enthusiasts who are looking for some cannonballs for their cannon and don't want the full weight of a cannonball. They could use a bowl instead. But
yeah, the bowl is a challenge for manufacturers because they last so long. They are well constructed. There's no two ways about it.
Mm-hmm.
The evolution of manufacturing of bowls has changed quite a lot. Gone from the wooden lathe and the turning and creating the bias to now they're computer robots, and you put the plastic resin into a cup, so to speak, and the computer comes in and forms it, and then another gizmo comes in and changes it, and then all of a sudden you got the bias being developed. It's
an
quite
interesting process, yeah.
Yeah, it is interesting. Yeah. So how are we doing over there? They're still staying tight, 10-9, and no one's giving an inch.
But we do have a little bit of map movement, though, and John's throwing some weight here.
He's put weight down, and he's changed the head. Whatever's happened.
Blasted through.
He may be sitting at least one. It's a bit hard to see in there. What do you see here on the screen?
Well, I'm trying to determine if that's Grant's bowl or not. He did move the jack back a little bit to that black bowl there. I think they were happy with that result.
It's interesting, the British Columbia team, in case of Tim Mason here, he's very active in directing. Tim plays lead. It's not, if you were playing club, they'd tell him to go and sit on the bench, perhaps.
You know, that's an interesting comment, because depending on who I'm playing with, I would much rather play lead than second or vice, I think. But yet I would also want to be the one up there calling the shots as well, which...
It does happen, though, that lead... I played lead one time as skip. I called the shot because the skip person didn't have the strategy and didn't know the angles and didn't understand, but it was a very good bowler, especially on the drive. He could drive very well, and thought if you needed. But I'm still a proponent of the idea, as the old saying goes, and I learned this once again from my dad, is that as the lead goes, so goes the game. And that lead has really got to get the head moving.
John just threw another drive, and I think they were looking to kill the jack, and he just trickled it off to the side to his first bowl. So I think he picked up one there. Not exactly the result they were looking for, I don't think, but still very, very positive result nonetheless.
Yep. Well, I don't know what happened here. Looking at the scores around, there's 18-17, very tight game that's just in front of us between Saskatchewan and British Columbia. Very tight game. Moving across, 7-6, another tight game. 20-3, not so tight. 13-6, 15-11.
And I think Murray just threw the jack in the ditch, so.
Well, Tim, he's about 3/4 of the way down, is he, or just a little bit less? But,
Pacing away. We'll see if they say it's good enough or they'll call for an umpire.
they called for one yesterday when Tim put that down. No, they were playing away. There goes Murray. We're about to go.
There are very, very few times where I will ever call an umpire to measure a short jack. I know that it can be used as a strategy, even if you don't think it's short, to sort of get in the other player's head or just to slow the game down and take a break. But
Right.
I'm a big proponent of beating them at their own game, and since I love short ends anyway, the shorter the better. If we can play an illegal jack that's shorter than it should be, then I'm all for it as well. So
Right.
personally for me, there are very, very few times where I'm ever going to call an umpire to measure jack to mat.
I'm much the same way, Jake. If someone puts down a short one, I say thank you. Through my dad, have a gizmo that I play bowls. I haven't done it much this year, but last year I did play bowls every day at home. And sometimes I play as many as 50, 60 ends, well, equivalent of 50, 60 ends. And it's all predicated around being able to bowl to an object and have the bowl come back to you. And so you're basically playing weight control because you can't knock this thing over. It's virtually you've got to play a perfect weight. And it gets in your mind a little bit after a while that I like someone put a short jack down, I say thank you. The ditch, when the jack gets down to the ditch, that's a little bit more tricky, I find. How about you?
Yeah, I guess it really depends on how confident I am on the day with my draw weight. But yeah, I can definitely see how people tend to shy away when it's closer to the ditch. You don't want to be in the ditch, so you end up coming up a bit short.
Yeah, because you don't need to give shots away by placing it in the ditch.
I'm a big fan of when you're practicing or training to use half tennis balls because then you can't move them.
Right.
Simply cut a tennis ball in half and place it on the green, and when the ball touches it, it's not moving anywhere.
I agree with you. In fact, in the move that I've just had, I've lost my half tennis ball and stuck inside. I don't know where it is. I was looking for it the other day to teach a new bowler at my club, and so I gave up looking for it, and I told her what to do. I said, "You're a tennis player. You must have lots of tennis balls. Here's what you do." And she said, "Oh yeah." But it is I agree 100%. It's a good way to do it. The other way to do it is not even have a jack or tennis ball, is just keep bowling to the center line and
Mm-hmm.
using your brain, forcing your brain to say that's the length you want and keep bowling to it. Have you ever spent time putting dummy heads together and then go back and then pretend that your opposition is down there and now you've got to weave your way through, and it's a bit time consuming.
It is time consuming, but I think it's very well worth it, and that's when having a partner or a coach or another person to help set up the heads and reconstruct them for you can save a lot of time. But yeah, I think that's a really good way to practice too, is to construct heads, and that's one of the drills that Lachlan had us do when I went to a couple of training camps down in Arizona. He'd set up heads, and you get 4 shots on the forehand, 4 shots on the backhand to try to get shot or get second shot or what have you, depending on how the head was set up, and you just have to practice with specific heads, and it's incredibly useful because then when you see that head in a game or anything remotely similar to it, you can think, well, hey, I practiced this
I've
on
seen
Tuesday
that.
night. I know exactly what to do and how I'm going to do it.
Mm-hmm. On the same kind of line of thinking is that, do you keep stats when you practice? I say, okay, you 25% or 50% or 75% on the forehand at the
Mhm.
three-quarter. Do you keep your own stats? And
Yeah, absolutely.
Measure against yourself?
There's a really good, I think it's the 48 bull test or something like that, where you play min length, mat length, max length, min, max, moving the mat back and forth and playing forehand, backhand, and it takes 48 bulls to do it, and that's a fantastic way to keep track of your stats too, because it's constantly changing, so you're not just actually getting into the groove of playing the same length over and over again. I find that to be super deceiving too when you play 8, 12, 16 bowls, all one hand, all same length. Well, then that's not really a true indicator of how well you're playing. That's just being repetitive, doing the same thing over and over again.
Right. The other thing I found is if I've been out practicing, and once I sort of practice, I don't practice on and on and on and on, because if I'm not careful, I'm just making mistakes. I want to finish when if I've done what I set out to do. I say that's enough. What do you do in that case? Do you play on and on for an hour, even though you've achieved your objective? Let's say you want to be 90% at the jack within less than a mat length. Would you keep playing on and on because you haven't used your hour?
No, I would definitely move on to a different objective or try to practice something different if I've done what I wanted to do with my draw weight or on backhand or trails or whatever it is that I'm working on. I would then move on to wherever I'm weakest at, because I generally know what I'm weakest at, and I'll work on that more so than anything else, whether it's drives, whether it's trails, whatever it is on the day. And once I've completed that and got to where I want to be, then I'll finish off with something that I enjoy doing, whether it's the caterpillar drill or the, I think they call it leapfrog, where you have to draw within a mat length of the ditch, and then you move your mat back a few paces, and then a mat length again, and doing that. I always start the year with that drill, and I absolutely love it. I find it's fantastic for weight control. It's enjoyable, I guess. There's a lot of drills that I don't enjoy doing. They're not very fun. I find that one to be incredibly fun.
One drill that Dave Burrows, the coach in Ontario OBA, he had a session on, put one on the boundary line at 3/4, and then you put one at the ditch on the boundary line on each side, and then one in the middle, and you had to draw your 4 bowls. Then you can't move to the next object until you really achieved getting within inches of the jack. So you have a lot of jacks out, and I thought that discipline was very good. I enjoyed that one. I'm reminded of that young soccer player. I forget her first name right now. You might know it, Jake. Last name is Ham. She plays for the United States.
Oh, I'm not familiar.
Anyhow, she was out coaching, out practicing at 6 o'clock in the morning or something, and her coach went past in the car and wondered who it was, and couldn't see from the road to And as he got closer and closer, he said, yes, I understand now why she's so good. She was out at 6 o'clock in the morning. The rest of the team didn't make it till whatever their designated time was, 9 o'clock, let's say, they were going to meet. So that dedication, that extra, going the extra mile.
Got a question here from Roger Smith. He knows the Nepean area very well. With Nepean having Algonquin College and Carleton U so close, and with Nepean being artificial turf, would it make sense to invite them? The game does have therapeutic qualities for those having the stress of school. Yeah, absolutely. That is a fantastic point. I know one thing that Nepean did this year is they opened it up to the Ottawa Sport and Social Club, which is a sports organization that offers a bunch of different sports for the Ottawa area. I know I first joined that when I first moved to Ottawa, and we played volleyball first year and softball second year. So they've got lawn bowls as part of that now, and they fill up. Nepean only has 8 rinks, and I think they play 4s. Not entirely sure. But whatever format there is, there's around 50 kids that show up, and they're all, 20s, 30s. And I'm sure most of them, not most, some of them probably do go to Algonquin and go to Carleton, but that's not specifically through those schools. So yeah, absolutely, it would be a great idea to go and talk to the schools and invite them, throw up some flyers or something in some of the school buildings. The thing being is that you have to actually find someone who's willing to go and do that. It takes time and effort to send a volunteer out to the school to do that, and you also need to make sure you're sending the right message. Marketing and promotion is something that I definitely want to work with clubs over the next few years, is how you're marketing or promoting your club. One thing that I see every club do is they say that lawn bowls is a sport for any age, 8 to 88 can play, and they think that that's a fantastic line, and personally I think that's an absolutely horrendous line and isn't going to bring anybody out to your club, because you're trying to be too much to too many people, and when you try to be everything to everyone, you're nothing and nobody cares. To put that into a little bit of perspective, if you're 8 years old, you probably want to play with your peers who are also 8, 9 years old. You don't really want to be playing with someone who's 88. If you're in your 30s and 40s, this might be a night where you're trying to escape your kids, so you don't want to have 10-year-olds running around with you while you're out there playing. So saying it's for anyone from 8 to 88 doesn't do anyone any good. What you should be doing is specifying each night. Monday night is for kids who are from 8 to 10. Tuesday nights are for people in their 20s and 30s. Wednesday nights is for seniors, 60 plus, or what have you. So it's very specific to your target demographic, and whatever your demographic is, I don't think really matters, but saying 8 to 88 is way too broad of a range that you're not going to get anybody coming out, because it doesn't mean anything to anyone. Using our youth program as an example, even what we tried to do with Nepean, we said anyone from 8 to 17 could attend, and we found even that was too broad of a range, because having a 17-year-old playing with an 8-year-old just didn't work well. So even something as small as 9 years is still even too broad a range. So how you market your club, be specific with who you're trying to attract. Not just saying everyone isn't good enough. You're going to need to be a little more specific for what sort of clientele you're wanting. And I don't think it really matters which night you pick or what demographic you pick, as long as you're offering a lot of variety, something different each night for each different group of people. And that's not to say that you can't have people from 8 to 88 playing. You could have a family night one night where you can have kids, grandkids, parents, what have you, all come out as a family night. But I would not recommend doing that every single night of the summer. I just don't see that being the most efficient way of attracting new people to the game.
Well, one of the attractions of the game might be that you've got to change it up by saying, okay, you do have a social night and it's a drop-in night. Clubs, certainly the clubs I've been involved with, after they get the new bowler training done in May or early June, they have a tendency to get into playing leagues, and it's all about the club members, and they close off maybe Sunday afternoon drop-in or Sunday evening or Saturday night drop-in. There's a tendency that it's, we've got our membership now, or didn't, or whatever, and they move on with their program. They've got a pairs league or or they're playing jitneys or whatever, and the recruitment side and the promotion side of the sport is put to one side till next year.
Mm-hmm.
'Cause it's, and that, I think, to your point, is a mistake. It should be year round.
Mm-hmm.
When I wanted to play this game, I had an intensity. I was 2 weeks or something late for the first year. I went to the club. They said, "You got to come back next year. We don't take part-time memberships, and we don't have any other programs." So
Mm-hmm.
I lost a year of. Came back the second year. I was a few days late. They said, "Oh no, we've already started the new bowler training. It's all sorted out." I'm
Mhm.
sorry, and a bit exasperated. I left, but next year I did come back on time. But you should have year-round recruitment. To your point,
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
you could offer a drop-in, a burger and a hot dog, and bring the family.
I think part of that too is the opportunity for new people to drop by. To your point about being a week late and now the league's already started and you can't join. Too many clubs I think offer a league that goes the summer round, and so if you are a week late, well then sucks to be you. You're gonna have to wait till next year to join the league. I would love to see clubs start getting into shorter leagues of 6 weeks at a time, so you can offer 2 or 3 leagues throughout the year. So if you do come up a week late, well then you just only have to wait 5 weeks till league number 2 starts.
Yep.
And I think there's a big benefit to that too, if you open up leagues and possibly include that in your membership. Maybe when you're a member of the club, you can join 2 leagues for free, but the 3rd league is going to cost you or what have you, and have a separate. You can change your membership fee structure, I guess, depending on how many leagues you're offering. I know, speaking personally, when I joined OSSC, the Ottawa Sports Social Club, for volleyball and baseball, it was a 6-week league, and I paid my $150 or whatever it was, and all I did was I came down and I played volleyball every Wednesday night for 6 weeks, and that was it.
Yep.
I guess technically I was a member, technically my fees went here, there, everywhere else, but really I didn't care. I just got to play volleyball every Wednesday night, and that's all I cared about. So offering shorter leagues that are a little more structured, I guess, is something that might help attract more people.
Yep, I think you're onto something. I think there's a discussion there that's worth pursuing and encouraging people to at least try it. I remember a couple of years ago now, I was encouraged by Mike Bester to go and play 5-pin, and it lasted from October through to April. And they had 2 different portions to it, but that's a very long time for the league to operate.
Mm-hmm.
In our fast food society, we want decisions, we want things to be done in smaller bites than
Mm-hmm.
longer bites. So
Mhm.
we don't want books that are 500 pages anymore. They've got to be,
Mm-hmm.
150 and fast and furious.
I'll use my girlfriend as an example. We got asked by one of our softball members if we wanted to join fall ball league this year, and she said, well, it depends on the night, because she didn't want to commit to a 6-week league if we're going to be gone for 2 of them, because that's a third of the league that you're not there for. So
Right.
with some clubs offering leagues that are, 14 weeks or whatever they are, if you're going up to the cottage for 5 of those, that might deter people from wanting to play, just because, I'm going to miss half the season. Why would I bother
Right.
paying my dues and joining and signing up? I'm not even going to be here.
The new Muskoka Club in Ontario, they offer a season membership, they offer monthly membership, and they offer daily rates.
Mm-hmm.
I think they're onto something.
I think that's a fantastic idea. I think more clubs should be offering that too.
Mm.
Monthly rates or weekly rates or what have you is very encouraging to get more people to try it for a shorter amount of time, because not everybody wants to be a member. That's a big commitment.
The other side of the coin on that is that budgeting is much more difficult.
Yeah.
Because you
Yeah.
have fixed cost, and they don't go away. If no one showed up, you only got half the number of people for the full season, and then for some reason or other it rained a lot. For the monthly, people just didn't show up or was all over the place. There's no commitment. There's a lot of conversation, but I think we're talking about the flexibility that we need to have in our thinking, and and the willingness for some clubs to experiment with some of these other ideas.
Yeah, that's definitely something that we'd love to promote, is to try something new. Even with something as simple as Bulls Day, having just an open house isn't necessarily the best thing, because you have an open house every year and it's the same old, same old. So if you try something new, then you might actually get some better results out of it. And we've seen that with clubs across Canada last year and this year, when they try something different for Bulls Day instead of just a regular open house, whether they have a corporate challenge or a trivia night or something different that they haven't done before. It attracts a lot more attention, because it's not the same old, same old. If you're constantly going to the paper every year saying open house on June 2nd, open house June 2nd, open house June 2nd, well, it just gets boring and it's the same old every year. But if you say, we have trivia night this year, and then next year we're going to have a band, and then the year after that we're going to have a bake sale or a barbecue, or whatever it is that you're going to do, changing it up, doing something fresh, something different is going to attract more attention than always doing the same old thing. So I'd love to get clubs to use Bulls Day as a chance to do something new, something different, something they haven't done before.
Well, what I'm amazed about, and I'm a big believer in the concept of developing Bowls Day and making it very exciting, because it's a national event and it shows unity and shows that bowls is right across the country. And there's so much you could talk about with promotion of Bowls Day. But I'm absolutely fascinated by the fact that there's a club in the Toronto area, Leaside Club. They work with cystic fibrosis and do Lawn Summer Nights. And they have 4 nights during the year. I think it's July, if I'm not mistaken. They put the call out that you play in the league, you form your own little league amongst these people, and they get 100 people paying for 4 nights of bowls. I think it's Wednesday night, it could be Thursday, I may be mistaken here. And they pay $100 for 4 nights of bowling, $25 a night. And it's packed. They go online and put this call out, and these people are there. And I've spoken to some people, well, how long have you been doing this? And, this is our 5th year. And, well, have you had the same people? Well, mostly the same people. We had to change somebody, they couldn't make it. They come in colourful outfits. One lady I was talking to, she was dressed as Madonna. It's a little different. Another one was dressed as another pop group, and they had music, pipe, canned music, but it was very, very upbeat. How can they get that? Why can't they have every Wednesday night, whether it's cystic fibrosis or the club doing it? Every Wednesday night we have this kind of event. So they talk a lot about how much contribution they get from this event, because cystic fibrosis, they do a profit sharing, and it helps keep the membership fee down. It seems to me that they should be replicating it as much as they possibly can, not just leaving it for. But it's a good thing that they do. But I'm going to say they could do it for other charities, or they could do it just themselves. Shows you new ideas, or relatively new ideas. If they're experimented with, you can change up the game. Well, this game is still very tight over there between
Saskatchewan and BC, 15-13 here.
Yep, there's
4 ends to go. And they have just over half an hour to complete these last 4 ends too, so I think they'll
be right on the.
I think they'll be able to finish this in plenty of time.
Yeah,
so just about done this end here too.
Well, Quebec is playing Ontario A, not giving up. Long way for them to come back. perhaps, but they just won that end and still fighting. Now, what if Jake? I'll ask you a tough question. If you decided, Cody called you up and said you want to go in and play pairs in the district, and you won the district, and you played the provincial, you won the provincial. You wouldn't be able to do that, would you, if with your current broadcasting responsibilities?
That's a good question. When I first started, we sort of agreed I shouldn't do that for year one just so I could learn the ropes and see what all goes behind the scenes at a national championship. But year two, we actually talked about it and said, you know, she was more than encouraging, saying that I should do that and that we can get by with having someone else do this. If need be, we can bring someone in to do this as well if I really wanted to continue playing. And so I thought about it, but I opted not to just because I figured the hassle of having to train someone new on how to do all this, or the extra work involved that goes behind the scenes. I don't know if I'd be able to clear that from my head, having seen how much work goes on behind the scenes here. While I'm out on the green there playing, I know exactly what's going on off the green, what Anna and Matt and everybody else is having to do. So I think I'd find that very challenging to actually focus on the game and not be doing my job, I guess, especially after the games are done each day. So when I finish the third game of the day, I'd be very inclined to come help finish and write press releases and post pictures and what have you, and do everything else that needs to be done. And so I don't know if that would be entirely fair to whoever I'm playing with, that I'm not fully focused on bowling. I'm sort of half here and half there. But I might try that next year for singles and see how that goes, just because singles is going to be a heck of a lot easier to navigate, to run after the forest pairs are done. There's a lot less people, a lot less going on. It's I wouldn't say it's more relaxed, but I would say it's a lot less work that needs to be done each day, just because there's fewer people. It's a smaller event. It's a lot easier. So I might try singles next year, and then if that goes well, yeah, I guess I could conceivably end up playing with Cody in pairs at some point. But picking a district to play out of might be a bit of an issue. I'm not sure which one of us is going to be stuck traveling to play in the district playdowns before we end up getting to provincials, wherever those end up being.
I asked the question because you know I know you have and I'll go back to using that word, a passion for the game and passion for your job. We've talked about that. But when you're out here on a day like today and you're seeing some very, very good playing, it must tug at your heartstrings a bit. I could be out here too.
I found it very challenging last year when I was at the juniors, because that was the first year I've been to one and not played at it, and having played at it so many years, thinking who was there and how they were playing, thinking like, man, if I was still age eligible, I would be on my way to Australia again. But the singles I found to be super challenging as well, just because I'd played in Winnipeg in 2015 and they were there in 2017. So I was thinking, I played on these greens, I know these greens, I can. I finished fourth when I was there. I wanted to do better. So that was very difficult as well, to not be playing in that. But for the team games here, it's different because I've never actually played at a majors before. I've never made it out of the province of Ontario in pairs, triples, fours, what have you. So it's kind of interesting, actually, that the first time I went to the majors was 2016, because working for Bowls Canada, not as a player. So I've never made it here as a player. So that's still kind of a goal that I'm going to need to accomplish at some point.
I see Saskatchewan, as you talked about consolidating your position. It's sort of, if British Columbia want to get in this game, more or less got to make the move now. It could get away from them.
3 ends to go, 6-end game, or 6-point game, sorry. Time to make a move this end. This is a very critical end here for BC.
Yeah, BC must make the move now, I think. If for some reason or other Saskatchewan were to put on another 2 or 3, anything over a 1, they are, once they start getting into the 20, it's psychologically BC are looking at the scoreboard also. It may make them play harder, but may say, gosh, we've got some work to do.
But once you get down to the last two ends, if you see it's a 7-point game, it makes things a lot easier for the team that's on top, because now you don't need to be
Right.
on the ball as much. You just need to watch for pockets. If you can hold them to 1, that's really all you need to do. Hold them to 2, that's fine. So now you're not even looking to get shot at the end. You're just looking to get second shot, third shot, what have you, and keep them from scoring a big one. So
Right.
I think this is a very crucial end here, because it'll dictate what goes on next end, if Saskatchewan's looking to avoid a pocket or if they're still looking to actually score.
Yeah, I think you're right. And the interesting thing about fours is that the quotations, the leader, is down and reading the head and not offering any encouragement. So maybe the team have got to work amongst themselves. They've got to pick each other up at each level and encourage each other. Some dynamic must happen down there with those three guys. What a wonderful ball that just came down from one of the players from Quebec.
Yeah, David James Smith just threw a heck of a drive.
Yeah, it was a...
You actually might have been able to see that on the monitor. Now that I'm looking at the screen, you could have seen that up in the top left there.
It's a little bit late to change the score, perhaps, but it was still well executed ball. It's something you take home with.
Roger's got a suggestion for next year if I end up playing in the majors. He said I could just turn the cameras on and play classical music for 3 hours, and it's soothing that way. There's an idea.
Mm-hmm.
So I want to talk a little bit about strategy here in this fours game that we're watching. Something that I've seen many a time, even at the Commonwealth Games, was a sort of oops on our Canadian counterparts, is when you're up at a game like this, you're up by, what is that, 7, give or take, with 3 ends to go.
Yep.
Quite often, as we talked about before, you only need to get second shot, third shot, what have you. You don't need to really score necessarily. You just need to keep them from getting big points. But a lot of people are still concerned with trying to counter, trying to stop a team from getting 6 by reverting to the drive. And that's something I've seen many times where, as an example, let's say that BC is lying 6 or 7. If I'm Saskatchewan, there's really no need to be driving at that unless every single bull is within half an inch. They're all touching, and there's no way you can outdraw it. But odds of that are very unlikely. But even drawing for third shot, fourth shot is still, I think, a much more efficient shot to play than trying to throw a drive and blow up a head of 7. Yes, it might be easier to try to throw a drive at the head, but if you miss that, you're giving up 7, whereas if you miss on the draw, sure, you don't get second shot, but now you have fourth shot, and that's still a fine result.
I agree with your strategy. That's my kind of thinking. Cut them down and keep the game within manageable amounts. The drive is a beautiful shot, but I'd rather come into a head with a tad of weight than try to be a hero.
Looks like a very juicy target right now for BC to crack at, with
Yes.
both Mike's bulls on either side. Daryl's saying that remember the VA Forest Provincials are open now, so start scouting your team. # Jake to the 2019 majors.
But he's right.
Yeah, that's fair too. If I were John right now, I'd actually be looking to disturb this. I'd be looking to trail the jack or blow up this head a little bit, because that looks like way too juicy of a target. I don't want that to be sitting like that when her end gets to the mat.
Well, I wonder if he was just trying to put something in there to get in the way. Well, it's 1913, but no, let's see what happens.
I guess it really just depends who's on the spot and who's a back pull there, because you got to count more than 1 here, I think, if you're BC. 1 is still good. Keeps it within 5 with 2 to go, but
No, yes, you're right. You've got to get a couple more if you can. Now, here comes the ball. Nothing occurred. I don't think there's any change. Is there? You're looking at the
Yeah,
monitor.
no change in the head, but it did change the position of balls behind the head now, so that might make a difference on how he's looking to move things.
I was playing a game, a league game the other evening with some very, very good bowlers, and they got frustrated when we were ahead of them, and the more they couldn't make their shots count, the more frustrated they became. And the more frustrated they became, the more frustrated they became. It just kept on compounding. And what surprised me is that why they basically didn't put down a simple draw as opposed to trying to take something out. Well, Larry did it. There's something very interesting. What happened there, Darryl? You've got better eyes than me. I think Saskatchewan might be sitting, could be sitting 3, is it?
Could be, but definitely going to be happy with that result just based on the fact that it's now going to be much harder for Harun to get at.
Yeah.
I'm not sure how Harun's going to be able to pull out a multiple out of this.
Well, he's got to stay paced. We go back to it's 95% mental.
Worst case, 1 will still be enough to keep them in the game, so if he can somehow weasel his way through there and pick up a 1. 5 with 2 to go is still very doable.
Well, his body language right now is a very slow walk back. I've noticed he has a much more deliberate walk. But here he goes. He's on the mat. Whoops, he's been disturbed. Somebody said something behind him. Wonder what that effect might be.
I wonder if he asked people to stop walking beside the green there because he's on the end rink and you can...
He's come with a fair bit of weight. No, I don't think that did the job.
Nope.
He may have been distracted enough there between his concentration. He had to have a 100%.
It's a tricky thing to be able to have to reset your concentration. That's once it's broken to be able to step off the mat and reset yourself is sometimes a very, very tricky thing to do because you think you've done it, but then you throw your ball and you're nowhere near and you go, oh, well, I guess I didn't. But that's something that you might actually even need to practice, but that's very hard to emulate too because it's very difficult in a practice situation to be as focused or as in game mode as you are in an event like this.
That's true. That's very true. Well, the challenge just got a little harder for British Columbia.
How many did Saskatchewan pick up there? 3?
I don't know. I'll go and have a look. So just bear with me.
I'll see if I can get rid of the scoreboard there, as that's now clearly going to be in the way. It's a little bit better, but not quite. I think I'm going to have to use the other camera angle, to be honest. Oh, so they picked up... sitting at 24, so they picked up 5 there. Wowza.
Well, they actually picked up 5. They were 19. I think that was a game changer.
Yep, absolutely it was. Just going to keep the scoreboard off for now so you can actually see the head.
Tim Mason's on the mat. He's delivering his second ball of this end. Let's see where it goes. Seems to be well weighted. A little bit behind. It looks like it ditched.
Interesting tactic here, as Saskatchewan's got the mat pretty much at the tee and playing jack to the tee as well. So this is a very full length end, and
Yep.
also sort of removes the respot as a strategy, really, because since you're playing to the tee already, doesn't make a whole lot of difference if you kill it just going right back to where it was.
Mm-hmm. Well, you talk about strategy, you know, in crucial situations. I've had the pleasure of being the victim of some very interesting strategies where people want to play head games. And one game I was playing, a fellow fell down in front of me when we were I think we were something like 13-7, and we were past the halfway mark, and they just couldn't get things going. He fell down. I helped pick him up. He stayed played on. We never scored a point after that. They went on to. They went past our point, and then they only added 3 or 4 more points. But the point of the matter is, we never scored after that, and they did. So that's probably the most dramatic head game change I've ever come across. No, I think the gentleman actually did have a problem. I don't think it was gamesmanship. Might have had a temporary change in blood sugars or blood pressure or dehydration or something. But maybe you got to do something here, British Columbia, to get back in this thing.
So it's an 11-point game with 2 to go.
Here comes a drive shot, and well, goodness gracious me, what a wonderful shot he put out. It's going to be a respot here.
Mm-hmm.
And I'm not quite sure. What do you say the situation is there, Jake? You've got a.
The answer is really tough to tell from this angle because I can't see whose balls are whose the way the camera angle is right now. But with an 11-point game with 2 to go, you need to for sure try to pick up a 5 or a 6 here to really make it possible. I mean, I guess you don't need that many to still be mathematically possible, but you want to try to make it so you don't need to score a perfect end on the last end.
Correct. Which are very hard to do, even if it's the first end or the middle one. Very hard to get. Another whoever that bowler was, he executed well both times. Two wonderful drives and cleaned up. Saskatchewan are walking very strongly there. Maybe they're sitting, after all of that, they're sitting in good position.
So we were talking a little bit yesterday with Roger about the magic number needed to secure a victory, and I sort of suggested that, an end and a half. So with a 16-end game, it's 24, which is what they're sitting at right now. And Roger said, how many people have even reached 20 and still lost? And that hasn't happened yet either, so 20 might even be the magic number. But we'll see if BC can pull off an upset here and change that magic number of 20 or 24 for what's needed to secure the victory. I would love to see a very exciting finish if they could make that happen.
Right. I think that would be good. So what we've seen so far is neither team is giving in. It's just the way the score is going. It's not as if
Yeah, I'm not sure if I could say that the score is indicative of how the game has been played.
correct. Here's a well-controlled weight bowl coming in. No, it ran out of steam. Might be in a nice position to take the line away. It's a bit hard to see.
So we've got 15 minutes left before the time bell goes. So they've got 15 minutes to finish this end and roll the jack for the last end. I think they'll be able to do that in plenty of time as John's rolling his last bull here. So the interesting thing is that you just have to have the jack rolled before the bell goes. You don't have to actually finish that end, so you can take as long as you need for that last end. But I would not be surprised if the last end is relatively quick, given that it looks like this game will be mathematically impossible for BC to win.
Mm-hmm. They're kicking a lot of bowls to one place. I don't know whose bowls they're kicking, but Saskatchewan got...
Saskatchewan picked up 5, I think.
Yeah, they... Well, the game's gone away from British Columbia. It's sad to say for them.
Really, it was just the last 2-3 ends here, really. I mean, it was a very tight game before that.
Yeah.
All you need is a couple of bad ends.
I'm not quite sure what Murray Petuli is doing and bringing up the mat on the last end with the score. He can do whatever he wants, of course.
I'm curious if they're having some fun here and seeing if they can put the jack in the ditch
Mhm.
by throwing some drives at this. Bit of a driving contest.
I've worked with Murray at Bowls Canada, and when he was treasurer.
Mm-hmm.
Maybe he'll come back with a bit of good fortune. There's a slot available for you, Murray. He's a very thoughtful man, very measured in his thinking. So this is deliberate. What's going on here? It might be something that they want to do for the next game.
Yeah, I think they're just having some fun here, seeing if they can put the jack in the ditch.
Well, he went in the ditch with that. So there's the score. Was it 29? Is it?
Yeah, 29-13 is what they're sitting at right now. Ooh, Tim just missed on that. Interesting putting the jack in the ditch. When I was in Australia, I had the opportunity of being coached, I guess, for a day or two by Maria Rigby. She's won quite a few international championships.
I know Maria.
And so she had Priscilla and I doing a drill of putting the jack in the ditch by playing just sort of overweight, I guess. It's not a full-on drive, but just enough to get your bull into the ditch. At first, it was difficult just because I wasn't used to the Australian-paced greens being February and not bowling for 6 months. But after a little while, you can actually start to do that very consistently on the Broadbeach greens because they're so true and consistent. You can pace it where it's going to go. And apparently that's how she won many of her championships, because she would first bowl, put the jack in the ditch with this nice little overweight draw. And I thought that was a very odd tactic, because if you miss, you've just thrown your ball in the ditch. But if you're successful, that just confounds the player that you're playing against, because, well, what the heck am I supposed to do? Yeah, what do I do now? They just put the jack in the ditch on the first bowl.
Right.
Very, very difficult to do on Canadian greens because they're not as consistent, not as true, not as fast. But I found in Australia it was actually something you could start to do very reliably, very repeatedly. I don't know if that's the strategy I would ever want to play on purpose. That can be
I think
strange.
I think you might want to think about that as I think you might want to think. Of course, I'm sure that seems double Dutch.
There we go.
But I think, Jake, that there's merit in that, and you use the word, you can confound your opponent.
Mm-hmm.
Perhaps you don't want to do it every end or something like that, but it does change the game a bit, and changes the thinking, and it changes... it changes the thinking. Maria is I believe she was born in Papua New Guinea.
Yep, I think you're right on that.
And I asked her if she played with my mum. She played out of the same club, but my mum would be 100 now, so I don't think they ever ran into each other. And we talked about bowls in New Guinea, and this funny comment she made that I think she got all her winnings in Australia, not in out of Papua New Guinea.
Mm-hmm.
But I have as I said last night, I have a great affection for the bowlers in Papua New Guinea, and Priscilla Westlake was born there, and they're very keen on their game in that small nation. And they're very talented athletes. Don't get to the world stage because they are very small. Money is a big thing. Here's just quickly. Here's another one. This is, I'm not quite sure what's going on over here. I think they're having target practice. All they're doing is trying to get that jack into the ditch, and no one's been able to move it yet.
Well, Mike did. Mike killed it.
Did he?
It went right back to the respot, so he's got one in the ditch. It's the only bull that's technically in play right now, so it would be one Saskatchewan if her end doesn't get this, or the next.
It's very low probability shot, the drive. I think it's less than 10% success rate or something, so the stats that I've read. Wonderful pickup there.
Curran gets it, but unfortunately it went over to the other side of Mike's bull, so it's still one Saskatchewan. So that'll be 30-13 as a final score.
Well, that's British Columbia is going to have to pick themselves up. I don't know what their chances of meddling is after this situation. Clearly, Saskatchewan's got a good chance. They're what now, 4-0?
Let me check out the standings. Saskatchewan 3-1.
3-1.
So, yeah.
Well, they've got a chance of meddling with 3-1.
So far, there's still plenty of games left for not.
Yeah. Oh, yeah. Yeah.
Not
For
over
sure.
the halfway mark. So, thanks for commentating with me, Ian. We'll be back again at 12:45 p.m. local time with our next match of men's fours.
I think that the next partner here, you might have Terry Scott, unless he's run away. But it's a pleasure chatting with you, and I enjoy it very much. And thank you very much for having me.
See you at 12:45.